Well, one bill the government would like to bring down is its contribution to Europe. This week saw the Parliament's first session in Strasbourg since May's election. The climate may have changed with a lot more UKIP MEPs, including, of course, 3 from the East.
For those who believe in the European Parliament, this has been an important week. The start of a new 5-year session, representatives from 28 nations working together for the good of Europe. The reality, though, is that this Parliament is more Eurosceptic than ever before, which is why UKIP has been getting so much attention this week. Their MPs protested when the European anthem was played in the chamber. The party is saying that its main role here will be to expose what's wrong with the EU, not to legislate.
In some ways, MEPs are a democratic pretense. They're here to show some sort of democratic legitimacy when the decisions are made behind closed doors by the Commission, and frankly, there's very little democracy here.
During the lifetime of this new Parliament, there will be a big debate about Britain's role in Europe. There may even be a referendum on leaving. Our relationship will probably change over the next 5 years. But in the meantime, the EU needs to be governed. And whether we like it or not, a lot of the legislation that's passed here has a direct effect on our lives in Britain. And so the question is, what role will our local representatives be playing in this new European Parliament? There is now just one British Liberal Democrat here. Catherine Bearder represents the South East, which includes Milton Keynes. It's not just new laws. Over the next few years, there will be important decisions made about funding, particularly for science and transport schemes. More than 500,000 people voted for UKIP in our region, more than for any other party. It believes it has a mandate to be here and draw attention to what's wrong with Europe. But many here believe that whatever your views, if you are a member of the European Parliament, you should surely be prepared to work in that Parliament.
Well, I'm going to ask some of those questions raised in the film to Patrick O'Flynn, who is, of course, now UKIP MEP for the East. Patrick O'Flynn, as a party, you're not doing your bit, are you?
Well, actually, I've only been an MEP for 4 days, so I think it's a little bit early to be condemning me on my record. And if I can just
say that you're not doing your bit, I said as a party. You're not.
Well, I completely disagree. If we take some of the other parties' MEPs for the Eastern region and what they've just said, Vicky Ford, her doing work, what she means is nodding through the EU taking over the competency on financial services, imperiling Britain's most successful industry. Yeah. Geoffrey Van Orden, if I can just finish, Geoffrey Van Orden's work was ushering in open-door immigration from Bulgaria. That's what they call work. I don't call that work.
We don't have Vicky Ford with us, but I know that she's tabled...
Well, we don't have Stuart Agnew with us either, but he got slagged off without being here to defend himself.
Vicky Ford has put forward 153 amendments. Stuart Agnew, although he has a better voting record than Vicky Ford, has only put forward 1 amendment.
Well, Stuart Agnew on the Agriculture Committee has used his expertise to intervene and help shape the debate on those committees very energetically indeed.
What is the point in intervening if you're not actually going to follow that through and make the amendments?
Vicky Ford doesn't even know whether she wants to be in or out of the EU. And I would suggest to Vicky Ford and Geoffrey Van Orden, they've just gone through an election campaign here making all those points, and they got their backside spanked by UKIP. And with all due respect to them, perhaps if the Conservative Party had more Eurosceptic candidates like Peter Bone over here and fewer kind of unctuous Europhiles like Ms Ford and Geoffrey Van Orden, they might have not done quite so badly in the east of England.
Richard Howitt says that as a party you need to get involved, so why not get involved?
I was involved in the chamber all week, and I hardly ever saw Richard Howitt there, and Vicky Ford wasn't even present when her own group leader was making a speech, which I thought was rather rude, actually. All
right, well, let's talk about specifics then. What are your plans for, say, funding, for example?
Well, funding is, again, this is Richard Howard's buzzword, European funding. He goes on and on about it without telling the people they're getting about half of their own money back, and he seems inordinately proud of this. We will fight to make the European Union less intolerable and less bad for Britain while we're stuck in it. But our mandate is to go over there and fight to get Britain out.
Will you fight for legislation that is detrimental to UK PLC and in particular detrimental to the East if you have to?
We will fight to oppose legislation that's going to make things even worse within the European Union. And if there are amendments that make a bit of legislation less bad, then we will consider supporting those amendments. And that will be a kind of new approach for UKIP, a new pragmatic approach.
So you're saying that's a new policy then?
That's a new
On occasion you will
approach.
make amendments if need be?
On occasion we will. Rather than having the purists where we'll oppose everything, primary legislation and amendments, we will oppose the primary legislation.
Because now you're getting involved in Europe. Now you're actually getting involved with what's going on.
It's a sort of second line of defence for Britain against the primary legislation. And, you know, if we think something is going to go through and there's an amendment which will make something less bad, that we will consider that on its merits. And that is a development of the UKIP position, that's true.
All right, well, let's bring Bob Blizzard and Peter Bone in. Bob Blizzard, the UKIP MEPs were democratically elected. The people of the East spoke. They have their mandate, so what's not to like?
He's been in the European Parliament for several years now, taking, over 100,000 a year, plus staff, from an organisation he doesn't believe in, and then not putting in the work. I think that's a bad advert for politics.
I don't think anyone could accuse Nigel Farage of not putting in the work. I think he's probably worked, albeit for a cause you don't believe in, harder than anyone else in this country.
Or for constituents?
Does
he work for
both he does. His constituents have given him a thumping big mandate just in May, so they're obviously quite pleased with him. I don't think they gave Labour a very big mandate.
The question is he working for the constituency or just advancing?
Well, I think as a Democrat, you'll agree that's for his constituents
Let's bring
to judge,
Peter Bone in.
Peter
Bone, in the election, people sent an anti-EU message, but they didn't opt for the Conservative option, so why not?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. The combined vote of UKIP and the combined vote of the Conservatives massively sent a message saying that the European Union needs to reform, and some of us believe we should come out.
What is your position? Because you want to fight a Westminster seat, but you're taking the MEP's salary whilst you're thinking about doing that, aren't you?
Well, I've been elected as an MEP. I've every right to be paid at the same rate as the other MEPs. I shall work as an MEP. I'm considering,
and fight a seat at the same time.
I'm considering my options. I'm not down for any seat at all at the moment. I'm still a bit of a new boy and getting to try and learn the ropes, see how I can perform the duties I've been elected to most effectively.
Surely you're not saying that you won't fight a Westminster seat, are you?
I'm saying I haven't decided yet.
So you continue to take the MEP's salary whilst you're funding you through that potential fight?
Well, sorry, I don't really follow the logic of the question. I've been elected as an MEP. I'm serving as an MEP on the mandate on which I was elected. I may or may not fight a seat at the general election next year. I mean, are you saying that candidates who might fight the general election next year shouldn't be being paid for their day jobs?
Well, it depends how much of your time you're going to be contributing to your work as an MEP and how much time you're going to spend fighting the seat, doesn't it?
Well, what do you mean spend fighting the seat? As I say, I've not put my name down for any seat. I'm an elected MEP. I was in Strasbourg this week, Brussels last week, Brussels again next week. I'm doing my job, and I haven't even put my name down for a parliamentary seat, even applied to one yet, and the general election is next May. So are you saying I should work for nothing while I think whether I'm going to be a candidate from about next March or April?
Patrick O'Flynn, we'll see what happens next. Thanks very much for joining us.